Hey there guys, we're starting the conversation on mobilizing the shoulder. And the shoulder is a really big and kind of scary topic that a lot of people kind of dance around and go, oh, I don't know, there's a lot of things, is it the rotator cuff? Is it your biceps? Is it your pecs? Is it your traps, right? The answer is all of the above, realistically. You're not a biological machine that only thinks of one thing versus the other. There can be areas that cause a little bit more dysfunction than others based off of your lifestyle, but ultimately they all work together to do your activities. So what we're gonna do is through this series, we're gonna talk about mobilizing different parts of that shoulder, knowing that ultimately you're gonna have to try all of them to see which ones affect you the most, and playing around with all of them to mobilize that entire shoulder to give you as much range of motion, as much movement possibility as we can. So today we're going to be starting off with the back side of the shoulder. What this is going to help out with is some of our overhead movement. This is going to help with, hey, can I reach over and kind of touch my back? How about reaching back to tuck in my shirt? Those kinds of motions. We're going to be using the lacrosse ball here, my favorite mobility tool. You can absolutely use a tennis ball. Tennis ball might be a little squishy. Easy way to basically make that tennis ball a little denser like a lacrosse ball is you wrap it in tape. Go ahead and check out that video that we did here. I think it's here. Here, where we talk about how to make a lacrosse ball at home. But we get our lacrosse ball, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna come back to the back of the shoulder. Now, we have this bony ridge on the back of our shoulder blade. This is our scapular spine. You don't need to know the words, but basically, at the end of that bony ridge, it starts to turn the corner, and it turns into our acromion. Again, you don't need to know that, but if we fall just off the back where it starts to round the corner here, this is kind of the zone that we want to hit. There's no right or wrong. You're going to play around with rolling that ball into some slightly different areas, but this is the ballpark that we want to play in, okay? So I'm laying flat down on my back. I'm going to throw that lacrosse ball again back into the zone. And from here, just like with all mobility drills, I'm going to breathe until it desensitizes, i.e. it stops hurting like a mofo, right? So from here, I can start to go, okay, if I kind of weasel around here, if I kind of worm around, what spots hurt? What spots don't hurt? Is there anything that is surprising? Oh, wow, I had no idea there was something back there. Is this all pretty normal? No, this feels pretty good to me, right? Once everything kind of gets to the point where I can sit here, clearly have a casual conversation, that's when we can start to incorporate a little more motion. So the motions that we're going to do are going to be external rotation, i.e. me trying to take my wrist and touch the ground. Because we're basically smashing the muscles that do that, it's not going to want to go that far. That's totally normal. Then I can do internal rotation, trying to take that hand and tap the ground. Now, one thing that you might notice as we do this, as we go into internal rotation, that shoulder wants to lift up. You'll feel less pressure on that ball. We want to keep consistent pressure the entire time. So if that means that you have to go a little less far on bringing your hand down, that's totally fine. If you want to hold your shoulder just a little bit, totally fine. But we're going to mobilize back and forth, back and forth. Eventually, it'll stop kind of giving you any sort of sensation. It might not be as painful. It might just feel like dull pressure because it is. That's when you shift around, go, hey, is there a new spot that I can mobilize into? And we're just gonna go back and forth, breathing so that we can keep up this effort. I found a spot, right? So from here, since I found that little spot, I'm gonna get a little more external rotation, because that's the one that it really feels like it turns on and the pain starts to increase a little bit. And when we say pain increases, we don't want to be anywhere above an 8 out of 10. If 0 is nothing and 10 is the worst pain imaginable, 8 out of 10 is the highest that we ever want to go on any of these mobility drills. Right now I'm at like a 4, right? And it kind of jumped up a little bit from a 3 prior, right? So I'm going, hey, that might be a little spot, that might be a benefit to hit. So again, I'm just working this back and forth, hitting multiple areas. Once I've spent a decent amount of time on that, I dismount. and we do the most important part, our test retest, right? So if I look at this shoulder, which I have not mobilized into external rotation, bringing that arm up and out, I'm just about where my face is. But if I come over to this side, right, I can, out of my peripheral vision, I can't even see my hand, right? I feel like I can get it almost behind my head, whereas this one, I'm rocking it right at about my ear. Okay? So showing that, hey, just getting into those tissues just a little bit, starting to get them to move, slide, roll, and glide a little bit better, gives us a little more movement capacity. Now, this is a great drill to do after your workouts or after you're exercising to basically get those muscles that have been super tight to start to relax themselves, but it's also amazing to do before our workouts or exercising activities or any sort of activity that we need to be doing overhead movements, whether that's something at work, something at home, because if I have more movement capabilities now, I don't have to compensate and then use maybe my shoulder or my neck, and we start to reduce the pain that we get in and around the spine, the shoulder blade, all that kind of stuff. So play around with that. We want to do that for about a minute or two a piece, 2 to 3 times a day. Play around with it.